for years, but it's just so interesting. And then also I can edge it even farther. Alright, hell yeah. So I have an AIRE Spud now, and I think this is going to be a real good boat, especially when paddling at the lake. I can still work on R1 strokes. I think the first thing I'm going to do though is this idea of paddling downhill. If I take a stroke, I'm probably going to go like that direction. And so paddling downhill, this technique is just go with it. I mean, if it paddles in a circle, paddle in a circle and maybe do the opposite. This is my offside, and if I'm going to take a forward paddle stroke and I'm going to spin, we'll just do the opposite. You know what I mean? And this is kind of how I learned a lot of the R1 strokes. And this fits the idea of going downhill. Because if you are in an R1 boat, you'll be in different environments, like eddies or whatever, sections of the river, where you're just like, man, I do want to go that way, but the boat really wants to go that way. So just go with it. Go that direction, and then maybe you can make a turn. Alright, this is the stroke that I really came to do tonight. I kind of call this stroke the Jedi. Your paddle is very vertical. Your paddle is right next to your hip. You really don't need to reach forward. You know, you can take like a very short stroke and you can paddle right at your hip. It's kind of like opening a gate, especially like on a valve. And so you're taking a quick stroke and then quickly opening that gate. So you're doing this and then this, and it just gives you like a really solid pry. And because you haven't taken too much of a forward stroke and you got a real solid pry, you as the center of mass is able to just kind of move this location. Doesn't matter what the ends of the boat are doing. And so on the strong side, let's do it. You know what I mean? So it's essential, and it doesn't matter like how we start this. If I want to go that direction, I'm going to just kind of paddle that direction. Paddle, pry. And you'll see me try to do this as fast as possible. Alright, hell yeah. And even with this stroke, we can work kind of on two things. I can reach out here and then lock it in. And then that can help me turn this way. Or I can do the opposite and push. And this is the harder direction to turn. So we'll do both of those. Alright, now I'm going to switch to the offside, so this should be just a lot harder. I'm just working on slamming that in. right, hell yeah. Since we're working on our offside, it's what we can do is just focus on the task that we want to accomplish and not pay attention to the direction of the boat. And so if my task is to get a fairly solid stroke, do this and then pry. And so it's again pull, kind of opening a valve. And this smashes up against the side of the boat. And as that water goes by, it holds it there and it gives you a bomber pry. So if I'm just focused on that, I'm just going to look at it and see that was the part that I was focused on, not the direction of the boat. Even if I did this, you know what I mean? I'm still focused right there, even though that we kind of got a little off. So again, even if I was just to do this in a circle, this is actually really good for me working on R1 dynamics, because when this happens, the boat for sure is dynamic. And with an R1 redesign, you know, you want to capitalize on whatever the boat's doing. And one thing that's very difficult is to go this way and hold any momentum in that direction. Going this way in a loop is very difficult to drive momentum. R1, you're always out on this tube anyway. And so hell yeah. So now we're going to get into sitting up on this boat. From this position, however I want to sit tonight, it doesn't really matter, but we're going to kind of get into this R1 position. The position is the most important thing. This is an R1 lean. When you're sitting on your outer tube, you're mainly on this tube and the floor. If you have a rocker boat, this is going to be out of the water. The other things that we can notice is that when we are on this 3/4, portion of the boat, our boat's going to go backwards a lot easier. And so we can practice that. And so we'll do this for a little while, and then I'm going to go sit back down, and we're going to paddle backwards. But even just from this position, if you get good at paddle, yeah. Alright, so I'm going to come backwards to you. Alright, hell yeah. I'm going to get some more juice in this camera. I think it's probably done. But we'll talk about how that's faster. One thing with this boat, I'll definitely price out how much the bladders are for the floor. They can be probably 200 bucks. But I do want to remove the release valve, because if you get more push onto the floor is the only thing that's just a little bit saggy in this boat. Alright, hell yeah. Let's do that same thing from an R1 position. And we're going to pry the bow. So if you are going backwards, pry first, paddle second. And that should just lock everything in place. let's switch to the offside, just to show you that if I'm going to come towards you, well, actually this is really difficult, because if I do a pry first, you know what I mean, we might, yeah, so that is kind of interesting. This is a really good skill even for me, just to be able to paddle on my offside and hold an edge. Right, hell yeah, that's the harder way to turn, so now we're gonna turn the easier direction. And if that direction is so much easier, it's good when you are wanting to switch sides and pick the most optimal, you know, if you're doing an inside turn, you want to be paddling on the inside. Hell yeah, let's talk about that one. Because I'm on my offside, I'm on a dead stop, I want to go that direction. What I have found in R1 from a dead stop is just to paddle that direction. And as the boat's rotating, keep paddling that direction. So it's going to be easy going that way, but let's see if I can come actually towards you. So I want to paddle this way, draw, back paddle, and let the boat spin. And so now I'm actually coming towards you. So if I want to go that direction, paddle that direction, and then at some point lock it in. Alright, hell yeah. The cool thing about an R1 boat is that you're sitting up high enough where you can shift this direction in the boat. That is almost the most important thing with an R1, is having a seated position high enough so you can lean forward or back. And so for my cockpit, this is kind of how far I want to go towards the bow. I'm going to be paddling the bow and weighting that bow, or sitting back. And so that's where an R1 cockpit for me is kind of a little square, if not a rectangle, that I can hit all those quadrants. I think that is the main difference between C1, sitting in a kayak with a single-bladed paddle, and C1 being, you know, kneeling with a single-bladed paddle with a pedestal, is that besides lean, there is no change in position of your body. And so I found it so beneficial to, like if I do want to get onto the bow, I would go over here, and to have a boat where no matter how small it is, to still be able to dynamically move around. Like this thing is too chippy and small, but if I wanted to get this corner, I would, and then I could back paddle this corner. If that makes sense, because even at the wave and you know, catching eddies, I have found that if you are trying to eddy out, it's always best to get the boat, and especially because the R1 boats are taking in water in the floor, is to really lean that boat back and drive it into an eddy. And so this even just like right here just shows you how fast a boat can go. So let's work on so I want to show you these like reverse positions. But yeah, it's dramatic. It's so dramatic sitting in the back, as long as you're doing the paddling right. If you're doing the paddling from here, I don't think it's as effective. Now kind of scratch that. No, scratch that. Is if you are actually trying to back paddle the boat, sometimes in an R1, it's useful to really lean up against the bow and do your back paddle strokes from here. Because now this will be, when you sit in an R1 boat, you're always sitting more towards the back of the boat. So I have done this a lot. And then there's just trying to eddy out. Trying to eddy out. Like that move right there can really drive you into an eddy. The other thing I wanted to mention about jumping around an R1 boat is if you are sitting high, you get the ability to weight your feet. And that's what I have noticed even surfing, is that if I'm surfing and the bow's getting low, I can actually lift my seat and put all the weight on my feet. And so that means now the weight, you're treating your R1 like a stand-up paddleboard or a surfboard when you weight your feet onto that floor. The other things that I have found in R1 is actually, you know, either sit down on the floor or, and something that I should probably do more is kneel, you know, hit the knees to the floor, because now all your weight is on the floor and that really lifts the weight off the tubes, so your tubes aren't going to be as catchy, and that can be a benefit. All right, hell yeah. I'm going to sit on... And if I'm going to sit in this R1 style, I probably don't need the seat this far back. Alright, hell yeah. I'm going to move the seat because I just want to sit up higher. I don't have to be sitting on the edge. So hell yeah, let's switch this up. Alright, hell yeah. This is my offside, but we'll get onto the strong side. Doing moves like a slalom kayak, where you're actually, getting back here and slicing the stern through. This is kind of what I want to work on. Like right here, if I'm already back here, this stern should just slice right through, and I should be able to get vertical just from this position. So from an R1 design, this is where I want to sit, and I can have more sponson. You can see that I can have way more sponson like right here. Like right here, and still have the back end go vertical. But this is cool just to even play around in this, to be like, hey, this is the volume. Like even this is too much volume, to really get this thing, to go vertical. Hell yeah. Alright, so I want to practice that from over here, just because this is something where it's way tippier on this offside. Where like right here I just feel like I'm going in a circle, even just for balance. And so it's so interesting that this is the strong side, that I can just feel like, I guess all I'm doing is locking it in. I'm letting that dip lock in, and then we're just going in that direction. So let's see if we can do that offside. Alright, hell yeah. What I just learned right there, and what I was telling myself is, we'll get back here. I was going to say that again. Alright, hell yeah. So what I just learned, and what I was telling myself is, finish the stroke. In R1, you're paddling with that energy forward, but then the finish, is all about the pry, keeping that momentum going where you want to go. But every R1 stroke has a finish And I don't even know what the hell I just said, but like, finish your stroke. I think that's it, you know what I mean? And like, just do it. Like, you know how. Even for me, I've been doing this for years, but it's just so interesting. Oh, this thing is tippy. Alright, hell yeah. Like, to start this sesh, the first thing I did was get in the boat, and I was just like, I took a forward paddle stroke, not realizing that R1 is 75% the finish of the stroke. Is you can do whatever you want here, but you better finish it. And even if you're just going back and forth, you know what I mean? Because if I take a stroke here, to finish this stroke, I got to pull it back even farther, you know what I mean? So if I'm taking this stroke and I do a pry, I don't know, you know what I mean? I guess that goes back to the fundamentals of like, let's see what direction the boat's going to go 45 degrees that way. So if I take real soft strokes, hell yeah, and then even by like the second or third stroke, we're already, you know, but from a dead stop though, we are going to rotate the boat. Hell yeah, and so third stroke, we're going in the direction we want to go. And so that's how I wanted to start this video, is like, that's paddling downhill. Like, and it just threw me for a loop because this thing is so rotational. And so paddling downhill is letting the boat do what it's going to do, also combining like to finish the stroke. At least stop the momentum. And that's where we're at. And that rotation is the hardest. Rotating that direction is very difficult to feel like you actually got glide going. So let me try to actually, oh man, this was so good from, is to really use your body weight going into, like if I want to go, and actually I saw like, hell yeah, I don't want to name drop, but hell yeah, the pioneers of R1. It's like just really big body movements with the paddle, and that really accentuates. What I have found is that if you get yourself back and you're paddling, what this allows you to do is get all of that boat kind of in the direction, like up over currents, you know, that you don't want to touch. You know, but then once you do lay into them, then it kind of changes that dynamic. Same thing with just like leaning over the bow in the kayak. But I still would like a V rocker where if I'm on this like tube, that I actually feel an edge when I just do that. And I think that is what, yeah, from a redesign, like, hey, we got this edge, but when I'm edging this boat, and I just kind of go back, not that I want to edge this, because that requires getting to the other side of the boat, but just like going from here to a shift, I want to feel another edge underneath the boat. And I want this to feel like a planing surface. I want it to feel like a planing surface just like right here, and then also I can edge it even farther. And so that's what I'm going to work on with foam, even for this boat, to kind of sponsor it out. You know, I mean, it's so tippy like right now, just, you know, and no one's done this. No one's sat on top of an IK, you know, just over on one side. I don't need to be sitting onto this side, I just need to be up higher. So kind of like sitting in a pedestal position. So that's where I'm gonna kind of just put a platform here. That's the simplest, like kind of platform this out. And then what I can actually do is start to work on just cockpit design, you know what I mean? Because if I am gonna lean, you know, something to push your hip against, and all of that can be done on this smaller boat, just so much easier than my big NRS. All right, hell yeah. All right, we'll do a little more offside. We're gonna practice finishing the stroke, hell yeah. And it doesn't have to be super aggressive, just do what you need to do, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's what I'm gonna practice on, is just like finishing the stroke. If I'm gonna take a stroke, 25% mental energy going into the actual catch and pull of the stroke, 75 into what am I gonna do, you know, on that finish. Hell yeah. So I definitely felt something there. Turning this way is very difficult. But from that reversed position, I felt, you know, like, so if I am gonna turn this direction, that's where you are gonna get more towards the bow. So let me show you that, like right here. If I do paddle the bow, I'm able to turn, you know what I mean, like that way easier. It's not really doing it on this boat, but hell yeah. So let's play around with that. Yeah, so this is the harder way to turn. And what I'm basically doing is I'm paddling on this side, but I'm leaning onto this edge. And so in an R1, this would be like jumping to the bow, turning backwards. So like this is the bow, turning backwards, and then, all right, so finish the stroke. And then when finishing the stroke, you know, sometimes you actually have to try first You know, it's almost like 100% of the focus has to go like on the finish. You know what I mean? So I'm prying, very short stroke pry, just to get that momentum going. All right, hell yeah. Hell yeah. I'm very excited to turn this into an R1. Hell yeah. All right, hell yeah, I think I'm done. We'll go strong. So that was all offside, so this was a good session for offside paddling. Yeah, let's see if we can do that same thing on this side. I see what that's wanting to do. It's wanting to slice. It's treating this as the stroke.